Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. Welcome back from the break on Payari Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ki pyari baatein from the platform of Geo Islam. So before the break on Payari Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ki pyari baatein, we were talking about what is the munkar and do we really have to see the munkar and then we have to stop it? No, that is the answer to that. And then what was munkar and what is the sin? What is the difference between them? And then we talked about that how to stop it with our hands. For you guys here who be at, and we talked that this was about. We discussed that this was the meaning of the people in authority, and those people in authority, they are in charge and they will be asked about it on the day of judgment, that why didn't you keep authority upon it. And that we told that this is a very serious matter. As we remember, Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu kept such a when he was Amir al-Mu'mineen. We remember that. So that is the same thing. He took it very seriously. We have to take it in such a serious manner. Now, let's go ahead. فَإِلَّمْ يَسْتَطِعْ, if he does not have the capacity, if he cannot do it, فَبِلِسَانِهِ, then with his tongue. What is that with his tongue? To speak out against it, to speak out against the munkar, to speak. And then, as I told that the tongue, this is a very comprehensive part. This is a very big bone of contention. That is that this tongue can throw us into the fire. Like it was said in another hadith that, and وَهَلْ يَكُبُّ النَّاسُ عَلَى وُجُوهِهِمْ أَوْ قَالَ عَلَى مَنَاخِرِهِمْ إِلَّا هَسَائِدُ وَأَلْسِنَتِهِمْ. And it was that, won't they be thrown in the hellfire? Well, most of the people will be thrown in the hellfire for the reason, because of the jests, because of the fault of their tongues. Because of the fault of their tongues. And again in this hadith earlier, that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that فَأَخَذَ بِلِسَانِ, and he took his tongue like this. وَقَالَ, and he said, كُفَّ عَلَيْكَ هَذَا, and restrain upon this, control this. And then after that, وَهَلْ يَقُبُّ النَّاسُ فِي النَّارِ عَلَى وُجُوهِهِمْ أَوْ قَالَ عَلَى مَنَاخِرِهِمْ إِلَّا هَسَائِدُ وَأَلْسِنَتِهِمْ. This again tells us, but we were right now talking about the bad things which we can do with our tongue, like shirk, like doing shirk. That is a bad thing with our tongue. Saying about the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without knowing it. Then namima, which is being a catalyst in fights. Yes. And then after that there was to abuse people. That is another type. So we have seen many, and that is again another reason that people will be thrown into the hellfire. وَهَلْ يَقُبُّ النَّاسُ فِي النَّارِ عَلَى وُجُوهِهِمْ إِلَّا هَسَائِدُ وَأَلْسِنَتِهِمْ. That is another thing which is a big lesson for us. But now there was another thing which we talked about, that 5 good things which we could do. And in that, of course, da'wah, calling people to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, calling people to the road of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in that, أَمَّرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَالنَّهْيِ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, in joining on the good and nahy anil munkar, forbidding the evil, and that is with our tongue. So we got the main idea with our tongue, that our tongue is the way, and it is, it can be upon us, it can be a favor for us on the day of judgment, or it can be against us. That's why we need to use our tongue in a good way. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those people who use our tongue in a good way, who use our tongue in a rightful manner. So this tells us again to speak out against this munkar. فَإِلَّمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. But if he then does not have the capacity, then this will be the rarest of all. فَبِقَلْبِهِ. What is فَبِقَلْبِهِ? فَبِقَلْبِهِ. فَبِقَلْبِهِ means that from his heart. And this cannot be identified. Severing all ties with somebody. If somebody is, doing a bad deed, then you sever all ties with them, break all ties with them, do not come to them. Like for example, we have seen that when 3 people at that time made excuses to the Prophet Muhammad not to go on expeditions, then the people of the town boycotted them for 2 months, and then after that they repented and came back. So that is boycotting them. You boycott them, you sever all ties with them. فَبِقَلْبِهِ. This cannot be easily identified. Sever all ties with them. Cut all ties with them. That is فَبِقَلْبِهِ. But then at last it said وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. But this is the weakest of Iman. This is the most weakest. This is, I think, the most last one. This is the most last one. First of all, there is فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ. Then it comes فَبِقَلْبِهِ. That is the third level. وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. And that is the weakest of faith. Now this was Nahi anil Munkar. But what is Amr bil Ma'ruf? Enjoining onto the good. This I told that calling people to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is with hilm, forbearance. The person who calls to good, the person who does Amr bil Ma'ruf, calls, enjoins into good deeds, وَالنَّحِي عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, and he forbids onto the evil. وَنَحِي عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, and he forbids the evil, and he prohibits the evil. He has this quality, the quality of softness. We need to be soft. We need to have hilm. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded this. Whenever we do da'wah, we need to do it with hilm, with sabr, with hilm. As it is commanded, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Musa alayhi salam that go to Fir'aun and speak with him in a soft manner so he can think and ponder upon it. So it's just another thing with hilm. Again, with sabr, people might reject you. That's why we need to do sabr. Just leaving alone, lasta alayhim bi musaitir, as it said in Surah Ghashiyah. And then indeed we have their accountability. It's upon us. It's our job for accountability. With sabr and hilm. This is very big qualities. And these qualities we need to have al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. Now, we need to, and now everybody, I hope, getting excited that let's do some nahy anil munkar. Let's do some amr bil ma'ruf. But there are 4 obligations we need to fulfill before that. We need to first ourselves do good deeds. We need to ourselves refrain from the bad deeds. And then we should call people upon it. Because if we don't do it ourselves, again it said in Surah Saf, chapter number 61, verse number 2 and 3. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu lima taquluna ma la taf'alun. Then again on verse number 3. Qabura maqtan 'inda Allahi an taqulu ma la taf'alun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes it. He dislikes it. It's like foul to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you say something which you do not do. And then again, there's another saying of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that a man on the day of judgment will be carrying his intestines and circling around, just like a donkey circles around a windmill. And the people will ask, didn't you enjoin on to good and call to forbid the munkar, forbid the bad deeds? He said, I used to do that, but I didn't do it myself. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from this punishment and make us from those people who call people onto this and who ask to do this, to do amal on this also. So this tells us another criteria which is very important. To do it ourselves first. First ourselves, then comes the other people. We should tell them and we don't do it. This shouldn't happen. So we see in this hadith, we have discussed a very important point over here. First of all, we discussed the point, the concept of Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. That enjoining people onto good and forbidding onto evil deeds. And then we discussed the 3 levels of it. That was, the first was فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ. Then فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ, to speak out. فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ. And if he can't, he doesn't have the capacity to do it, فَبِقَلْبِهِ. Then he severs all ties, he does it with his heart. وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. And this is the weakest of all faith. Then after that, we discussed the concept of of Amr bil Ma'ruf in a short while. That how Amr bil Ma'ruf, and then after that, the criterias, these 4 obligations which I told, that first we have to do it ourselves, then we should call people and do this Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. Call people onto the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. First we should do it ourselves. So, dear viewers, I hope you enjoyed this hadith, and inshallah, we will meet in the next program, and that is another important hadith. But for today, that's all for today, and I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us from those people who are as-sabiqoon. He gives us the tawfiq to do good things with our tongue, to forbid all the munkar, to do amr bil ma'ruf, to call people onto the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and nahi anil munkar. ربنا أتمم لنا نورنا واغفر لنا إنك على كل شيء قدير ربنا لا تجعلنا فتنة للذين كفروا واغفر لنا ربنا إنك أنت العزيز الحكيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.